Welcome to Chapter 4, Supply Processes and Technology. So we're going to talk about some of the different processes that are obviously effective and efficient. So with specifically related to purchasing, the exchange of money for the goods, which is the supplier's responsibility, obviously. So some of the reasons for developing a supply process for purchasing in particular, you can be purchasing a large number of items, large dollar values. Some companies, their material costs are higher than their labor costs. Also, you will need it for an auditing trail. Where is the money spent? And it can cause your company to go out of business or cost you tremendous amounts of money if you have poor performance, as we saw to a degree with the Target case that was presented a couple weeks ago, if you were in that particular class. And so you need to align the goals and the strategies. This is something that you are very familiar with. So you have vertical alignment. So this would be a vertical supply chain. So you buy your suppliers. Some companies will do that. They'll buy, so that would be equivalent to Coca-Cola buying the fields for the sugarcane and things along this line. And horizontal, this is a strategy where you buy obviously at the same level. And both of these strategies can have pluses and minuses. I remember a number of years ago where Pepsi, Yum Brands, they went on a buying spree. They bought Burger King at one point. They bought KFC and Pizza Hut, and then of course put their product in those markets. But some of the competitors, say McDonald's, they said, Coke came along and said, why are you supporting your competitor who owns the Burger King across the street? So that strategy worked to a degree, and so they did some, at least at the retail level, they did sort of a horizontal alignment. But the vertical alignment would be, let's say you're Frito-Lay, you would be buying the places that provide you with potatoes for your potato chips. All right, again, information flows, where it goes, to whom it goes, is it internal, is it external? Vertical and horizontal, again, inside the organization, outside the organization. Steps in the supply process, obviously this is like gap analysis, recognizing you have a need, identifying what the need is, how you can satisfy that need, and then satisfy the need, and then perhaps do a follow-up on it to make sure that the need has been satisfied. In this case, I'm sure that you've had situations where you've had items expedited, you need it done right away. You need to perhaps inspect the goods unless it's from a certified supplier. Certified suppliers will have less than 3.4 defects per million opportunities, so you don't have to inspect the goods. So this is becoming more and more common. This will be part of a course in quality. You need to make payment and record your relationships and record all of this. So this just goes through the details of each one of the steps, identifying the need, what quantity you need, when you need it, the right item in the right place at the right time is really what it's all about. Describing the needs and where this comes from and why you need it. You need to get a requisition before you can have a purchase order. So it needs to get approvals so that you can purchase something, or that be as simple as pens. I know that at SAIT, they will stock pens, but just literally the cheapest pens they can get a hold of, because they know that people will accidentally forget and take them home with them. So if you want a pen that is not just the absolute bare bones cheapest pen, you actually have to get permission from a supervisor. Otherwise, they're stocked. I even worked at Royal University Hospital in Saskatoon, and they did not stock pens because there was too much. There was too much of them walking away, shall we say. So you need to identify in the requisitions, obviously the time, there's a requisition number, etc. Not going to bore you with all the details on this. It needs to be signed off through a process. This is even requisition, and sometimes requisitions are when you go to get them out of the warehouse as opposed to external, which would be a purchase order. Right. So again, RFIs, RFQs, and RFPs for depending on what you're looking for. If you already know exactly what you want, then you can get an RFQ. If you're not quite sure, let's say you want a new military vehicle, you may say, these are some of the criteria we have, come up with some proposals for this. A supplier selection, identifying that it's not just based on price, that it could be based on experience, etc. There may be limitations geographically, by Canadian, by US. This comes up all the time, it seems, even though they sometimes forget that it's not good because buying from your country is not possible. Like, I don't know that there's any place in Canada that grows bananas, so that wouldn't be possible. But then also buying it from places that may be more expensive. So people forget that. It's like, oh, let's buy from, Canadian. Yeah, well, buying Canadian means you're going to be spending, $45,000 on a basic car, as opposed to the car was made in Mexico, where the labor rates are much cheaper. Again, placing the purchase order, and a lot of work goes into that before you place the purchase order. And you can also place standing orders, etc. You follow up on it. You just don't cut a PO or issue a PO and then just expect it to follow up. You may need to have it expedited, maybe even de-expedited, maybe even sometimes break it down into thirds as opposed to receiving it all at one time. There's a very good example of that in the book The Goal by Elijah Goldratt, which I strongly recommend people read. It's very easy reading. It's kind of half textbook, half novel. And it's got a very good example of where you would actually not want to receive all of the product at once, simply for storage space. You would want to see it. In that example, it was 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Again, have confirmation of receipt. Just a couple of days ago, I ordered something on Skip the Dishes, and it never arrived. First time, never arrived. So I contacted them immediately. I said, it's not here. Well, they put it on your door. No, they did not. I checked 3 times. So they couldn't reissue it. They issued me a credit, and I had to reorder the food. And the second time, they actually delivered it to my door. So you have to make sure that I'm sure we've all received things where they sent us the wrong item, they forgot something, and you need to confirm that the goods are not damaged, etc. Like if you receive something from an Amazon package, do you actually get what you ordered? Usually given a certain period of time to check it over. Again, was it damaged? Was they send you the wrong color? All of these kind of things. All right. And trying to reduce or eliminate inspection. As I mentioned earlier, certified suppliers have 6 Sigma, 3.4 defects per million or less. And you don't have to inspect their product. You just take it, open the box, and put it on the production floor. And then, of course, you need to pay for the goods, kind of the part that's painful for most of us. And you can get your business will stop sending you product. And a big part of accounts of supply chain, or in specifically purchasing, is negotiating terms. Then you again finance will try to delay the terms, delay the payments. And, getting 45 days to pay for a large dollar item is significant compared to 30 days. Or maybe getting a discount for paying early. So procure to pay, as you can see, it's listed in your book, and make sure that you do pay the invoice. I know that with the company I work for out of India, I find the process really painful. They have to issue the work order. I have to agree to the work order. Then when I've done the work, I have to submit they issue an invoice, which I have to put in my banking terms because it gets paid from the United States. And they don't like to issue checks anymore. They're having too many problems with that. So I had to set up a US bank account, which I did. And then they will send me a notice that my payment has been processed and I will get paid on a certain date. So, but it's quite, I have to do several steps in their system to upload my banking information, sign the actual invoice, and then it needs to get approved. It goes from the person, the project manager approves it. It goes to the accounts payable department. Once they process it, I get an email saying you will get paid on a certain date. So it's quite involved. And even with the Canadian suppliers, I now get direct deposit. Especially this is picked up since COVID because checks were going missing. We're taking a long time to get from one location to another. Again, maintaining your records. So here's a flow chart, which I'll let you go over, selecting the supplier, implementing all of these types of things. And so you'll have a procedural way of dealing with your purchasing and your sourcing. Again, typically the A items, which you probably remember from your supply chain classes, are the high dollar values. They may be low quantity, but they're high dollar values. And so buying a C train for the city of Calgary, they don't buy many of them, but they're big dollars. And then non-strategic, the B's and the C's, especially the small things like nails, staples, paper, pens, things along that line. And you can have, again, different levels of authority, who's allowed to prove this or not. I remember years ago, again, at Royal University Hospital, I had signing authority up to $20,000, unless it came to capital equipment. And then my signing authority was $100. So I couldn't buy a chair for our admin staff. I got around that, by the way, especially with our computers. I wouldn't buy a computer. I buy all the components. No, it wasn't $100. It was $200, something like that. Anyways, I'd buy like the wheel, the computer card, the video card, and then I'd write assemble or install. But I could spend up to $20,000 as long as there wasn't equipment. So anyways, you want to maintain your relationships with your, to make sure that you're going to be getting your product when you need it. We've talked about that earlier in the course. Some ways to reduce the transaction costs. Procurement cards, which we actually talked about in last week's class. If you're in the same, this would be winter of 2021. EDI, electronic data interchange. Reverse auctions, where you go out and you get people to bid on, I need so much steel, and you need to purchase so much, and they get people to bid on it. Or in a reverse auction, you can also have a situation where you say, I'm willing to supply this much steel at this place, at this quantity, and at this price and this quantity, and people will look to purchase it from you. All right. So purchasing is a hub based from your sales forecasting, your production people. You're involved with a wide range of people, your accounting department, quality control, inventory, obviously, which may generate purchase requisitions, which usually, even in today's highly automated world, usually still requires human interaction. And I know it's becoming more and more automated, but you don't want to issue a purchase order that's completely computer driven unless you're absolutely 100% sure, and I mean 100% sure that it's accurate. So you might wind up ordering 10,000 of something when you only needed 10 because of a glitch in the system, and then you're stuck. It costs you a lot of money. So there's usually a human interaction and checking over that. External, like a purchasing agent or a buyer, procurement specialist, whatever you want to call it, they need to know a lot of things. They need to know about customs, taxes, what the markets are like, what transportation is like. So they're a real hub again of dealing with transportation companies to actually get the product from where it is to where you need it to be. And again, internal information flows. You can potentially reduce the costs. I know that when RJR and Nabisco went from paper purchase orders to EDI or electronic purchase orders, their costs went down from about $70 per purchase order to about 70 cents, a 99% cost reduction. And these days you also get efficiencies where you send a purchase order through EDI, there will be an acknowledgement that it's been accepted correctly, that it's got the right quantity, the right product, as opposed to the old days, you put it in the mail and you never weren't sure if it ever got there. You just kind of assume that it did, or hopefully it did. So it's actually better with information systems. It's faster, it's more accurate, and you can actually go in and see where your product is, like just like when you order something on Amazon and you want to track where it is. They'll say at 8:28 this morning it arrived in Calgary, and you'll see that it's out for delivery. And some systems you're 11th in the queue at 11:44 in the morning. Of course, you want to make the process very effective, and technology can help with that. Again, with Colby, and this is again winter of 2021, with Colby's excellent presentation last week, talking about transparency in the process so that people can go in and find out where things are. And even external people can come in to audit. And again, it's much faster, it's much more efficient system than the old traditional hand the piece of paper to your admin person. They type it on a purchase order, it gets signed. And I remember when I worked for Royal University Hospital, there was like 7 copies or something like that that would have to be sent out. That would all be done electronically these days. And all the pieces of paper would be done in an electronic way. And even at a car dealership where I lease my cars, and I know this isn't quite purchasing, but I used to have to sign 3, if not 4 copies of the lease agreement, and they go in different places. And when that person who was in charge of that retired a couple of years ago, one of the first things they said, let's do this electronically. The person, of course, was older and didn't like change. And so when that person retired, they went around to the staff and said, what could we do to make this more efficient? Because you used to have to print off like 4 copies of it. You used to have to be signed. You used to have to be handed out, to all of whoever got the copies of it. And this way it would just be done all electronically, and they could email you your lease agreement. So rather than printing it off, you put it in an envelope or brochure, putting it somewhere in your house that you can never find. And again, enterprise resource planning systems, cloud computing, EDI, which has already been mentioned, online auctions, RFID devices, which are not as accurate for my information as you might think. And there's also potential for theft, that people who have the RFID device readers can be literally walking down your street and if you've got RFID on your brand new big screen TV, they can tell that. But there's also some advantages. You can track things, and they're becoming more and more or less and less expensive, more and more cost efficient. So here's about ERP, which I think we've all talked about with SAP in particular. Cloud computing Amazon makes most of their money off Amazon Web Services. And they are, in fact, this is in February of 2021 that I'm recording this. Yesterday, they announced that the NHL is going to use Amazon Web Services for their cloud computing. That's where Amazon makes a lot of their money. And the person who leads up that area, all right, the person who leads up that area is now going to be the new CEO later this year for Amazon, as Jeff Bezos steps aside. Again, different types of cloud computing that we have. And again, I'm not going to expect you to know all the different types of platforms. It's not what this course is about. Using electronic procurement. Again, electronic catalogs. Amazon to me is just an electronic catalog. You can go in, you can search it, and companies have gone from here's our catalog to now searchable. A website, we expect to be able to go in and search on the Canadian Tire website for our goods. Otherwise, it's just kind of really rather useless. And that's the way how it first started. You used to just put their catalog on there, and you even get flyers these days. They're not searchable. Here's a flyer. You have to flick through the pages. There'd be 10 or 12 pages you have to go through rather than saying, looking for pork chops or whatever the case would be. EDI, a standardized business language, where it's the purchase orders in the same format from one company to another, where it converts it. It's like a universal translator. If anybody's a Star Trek fan, right? It's fast, it's more accurate, and it speeds up the process cycle. So the purchase order used to go out in the mail. It'd take a while to get there. And again, you didn't get acknowledgement of receipt. And these days it's instantly. Like you would say that if anybody buys stocks through, say, Questrade or iTrade or whatever, and you get instant purchase, and you get instant acknowledgement that the order's been received, and usually it's within seconds that the order's been processed, unless you put in like a limit trade or something like that. And it provides an audit for it, your purchase. And again, opposite of an intranet is an extranet. Okay, so it deals with outside of the company. So private markets are intranets, so it's limited to who has access. Online auctions, private auctions, reverse auctions, real time, and the price goes down. So if I didn't make that clear before, there's different and you can see the price will go down. I'll sell this at this price, and then an hour later is perhaps a lower price. All right. So in this particular case, you have reverse auctions. You have qualified suppliers. Usually you keep it very limited. They know how to set the price, and you have clear rules of conduct. So here's some limitations of it. You can get unqualified suppliers. This is, again, part of what we've already talked about in the course. Or phantom bids from companies that really don't exist. You can get collusion. And if you were listening to Colby's presentation last week, he was talking about this in class, about collusion in the previous system, where people would come with two bids and literally sit there and wait to see if somebody else had come in with the bid. If there was no other bids, they'd submit the higher bid. It's kind of related, right? And online auctions, it can risk your good supplier. Again, this came up in a presentation recently, and again, I'm not going to go through this in detail. You can have the cost of actually running the auction. You can have some cost savings, etc. RFID devices, which I think most of you are aware of, little like computer chip with an antenna that emits a signal, and it can be tracked literally on a global basis. And so there's obviously the different types that you have: passive, active, or battery assisted. You can track your inventory, and companies are slowly starting to move towards this. Large companies like Walmart and things like that are slowly starting to move as the items, as the chips themselves become less costly, more easier to apply to products, but they're still problematic. At least very recently, when I talked to the people at Walmart, which I go on tours of regularly in the pre-COVID days, and they still say there's a lot of errors with them. They're not accurate enough. All right. So that's the end of this little presentation on Chapter 4. I hope you enjoyed it.